Very warm welcome to the United Debate Show. United into the last four of the FA Cup thanks to a fantastic win at Fulham. They beat Newcastle, having come from behind in the Premier League. And this week they prepare for Inter Milan in the Champions League and Liverpool in the Premier League title race. Should be another big week. Plenty to talk about, of course, as ever. And with me is Frank Stapleton, former United striker, of course, and chief football correspondent for the Sunday Express, John Richardson. You're both very welcome. John, I guess in many ways, the more United keep winning, the more people are saying that this clean sweep is on. Do you think that it could?
It's a hell of an ask, isn't it? But United are capable of doing it, definitely. But whether they're going to run out of games, there's going to be too many games. Champions League, I think, is the one. It's the hardest, the most arduous task because of what's ahead of them. But FA Cup semi-final, you've got to take them, I think, to beat Everton, get to the final. I think the Premier League is theirs. So it's just the Champions League. Yeah, it is possible, but it's going to be a hell of an ask.
I guess it's the number of sort of one-off potential defeats that mean the cup competitions are always the one that you can least predict.
Yeah, of course, and on only one day you could get, a semi-final. We talk about the FA Cup semi-final. Everton could play above themselves, just have a little bit of reaction from a game before, and all of a sudden it's gone. So, this is why the manager's trying to play it all down. He doesn't really want the players looking ahead to things, what might be, because they go very quickly then. But I just think in the form that they're in, and I agree with John, if they can do it, but in the form that they're in and the way they're playing, no matter who plays. But it can happen just one game. If you lose one game and it's gone, and then they're not talking about it. In many ways, I suppose, that they wish that they could do that. It's a bit like the Van der Sar record. Everything was too much focused on that, and all of a sudden people are looking at the time on the clock instead of maybe focusing more. So once that got out of the way, I just felt that it's just running freely now.
I mean, on Saturday, for example, the opening 15, 20 minutes or so, Fulham really made it a cup tie. And, I mean, United maybe could have been a goal down. It could have been a different story.
Yeah, but United have got the momentum. Everything's going for them. They've got the confidence there, haven't they? And they can weather any storm that comes their way, which they did, as you say, Ali, for the first 15 or 20 minutes. But once United score, which they did, you could see the Fulham players in the faces, they're deflated. They think, oh, here we go again. And in the end, you see Roy Hodgson on the sidelines when it's 4-0 thinking, oh, I want the whistle to go. They're that sort of team at the moment. They just kill you. They kill you on the break. They've got the momentum going. They've got players in form. They're scoring goals again now, after that rash of 1-0s, which was not typical of United. They're playing well. They're at the top of the game. They're probably the best team in Europe at the moment. They're on a high.
And of course, the interesting thing is another different team selection, another few people left, Ronaldo and Berbatov not involved, and yet the formula again appeared to be the right one.
I think that's a lot to do. It's the quality of player rather than the numbers. You can have numbers and just throw people in, and if they're not doing it, you just think that doesn't really make any difference. You could have 16, and if you had 21, and the other 5 weren't up to it, but they're all up to it. They all want a taste of it. They all want a bit of it. The managers give the youngsters a chance. You saw it in the Carling Cup. We even seen a little bit. Welbeck came on Saturday for a little bit at the end. So there's little taste for them. And every time they get in, it doesn't look like any difference. You actually got a chance on Saturday, which was great again. And the manager, again, you always say, oh, just look to the next game. But he can't. The next game is the most important, but you've got to look beyond that because every single competition is important to them because not so much the pressure of saying you have to win it or the possibility is there to win it, is that the manager now has to get the momentum. And what he's done again this year is he's got his formula right in terms of the rotation.
And also,
everybody else has tried it.
What's very important is that team spirit, isn't it? You hear about problems sometimes at Chelsea, things have been going off at Liverpool. Manchester United, everybody's together. I remember seeing Wayne Rooney in the League Cup final there. He's booted and suited. And he's like a little schoolboy, isn't he? Excited at United winning. So that spirit everywhere. And that's so important. That's engendered by the manager, obviously. But I think that's a very important, it's a key issue, I think, in the running.
It's fascinating as well, isn't it, that obviously Rio Ferdinand is the downside from the weekend, but all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but over a period of time, Johnny Evans is emerging as a genuine, secure fit when someone is injured in the heart of the defence, isn't it?
Well, I think that's, if there was any question marks, and I'm not saying there was, but in the first leg against Inter, if there's any question marks about him, they were all answered, because in that game he was outstanding. He wasn't intimidated by two big strikers. His use of the ball was good, and at that stage you realise that it's not 2 from 3 anymore, it's 3 from 3, so the manager then has a real choice to make, like he does in the front positions. And he's just emerged, and he's becoming better and better, and he's still only 21.
Fantastic temperament as well. And there's been a few managers after him. I mean, Roy Keane was desperate to make the loan deal permanent. I know that Alex Ferguson's had other managers call him. You know, he's a wanted man, but he's going nowhere at the moment. He's doing superbly well.
Of course, United now meet Everton, as I think Frank mentioned before. What do you make of the semi-finals being at Wembley, especially as it's turned out, two North West teams trekking down 200-odd miles with all the traffic and so on?
I'm a traditionalist. I think the FA Cup final should be at Wembley. I don't like the semi-finals being at Wembley. I think it dilutes the competition. You know, everybody wants the FA Cup to be big again. Well, the FA aren't doing themselves any favours by having the semi-finals at Wembley. As I say, I think it dilutes it. You can have a ridiculous situation here of, 90,000 people. Oh, OK, if it's the final, fair enough, but this is the semi-final. I mean, Frank knows better than me, but there's been some fantastic semi-finals at places like Villa Park, Hillsborough. That's tradition for me. I think the FA, I know, nobody can do anything about it. It's in the contract. The FA are after money, and so it's going to, no matter what, we can bellyache here, but nothing's going to change. But I think it's a travesty to have the semi-finals at Wembley.
Frank, do you think if the Everton fans and the United fans were offered the choice, I don't know, of, say, Anfield, the City Manchester Stadium, Villa Park, even though they'd be, say, 20,000 each rather than whatever it'll be, 40,000 each, that they'd still take that as the preference? I
think so, because you just got to look at the cost of getting down there. If you've got to travel to Villa Park, at the outside it's an hour, and taking motorways and things and traffic. But I just think that the FA have created this situation because of the stadium. They have to use the stadium. It's not getting used enough. They're not bringing enough income, so they have to create it. Or we had the playoff situations and everything. But I just think that it does take away from that tradition. I suppose if we had, all right, you can't use Manchester United Stadium because, for obvious reasons, because it looks possibly that the other semi-final is going to be two London teams. So you're looking at it now and you're thinking to yourself, well, where else is there? But they're looking at volume rather than quality, which is it's just a shame, really.
I mean, it could be staged at St James's Park. It's 52,000. Yes.
That's not enough for the FA, John, is it?
No, they want the money. They want the money.
Well, then they need the money because they need to generate it. But
it costs £757 million.
Why leave the stadium empty and use another stadium? So I'm afraid we have to do it. And it's here to stay. I don't think that's going to change. We can debate this forever, and they're not going to listen because their priority is to make sure that
in a few years' time, maybe they'll have the quarterfinals down there as well. I mean, what next?
Third round, even, yeah.
I mean, a few years ago, obviously prior to it being bulldozed, Wembley was somewhere that fans craved to go.
Well, the chance, aren't they? We're going to Wembley, but now we're going to Wembley in the semi-final. For me, it doesn't ring true. But as I said to you, Ali, it's here to stay, I'm afraid. Nothing we can do about it.
Well, that's a month away. Let's get on to immediate matters. Inter Milan. I mean, you were mentioning before about, you can't just take every game as it comes when you're building a strategy to take on Inter Milan. That 0-0 result's never been Sir Alex's favourite in Europe away from home ever, has it, really?
No. Well, but the last time I remember is the Monaco game. They went over there and everybody thought it was a good result and drew 1-1 at Old Trafford and lost, obviously out on the away goal. I think that you can't actually criticise them because they did try and score. I mean, 4 or 5 chances in that first half and another 2 or 3 in the second half. But if they go about it, I think they won't play with fear. That's the thing about it. That's probably the big thing about the team, is they don't play with fear. There will be a little bit of fear, and that fear factor comes into it in Europe. But I think that they'll go and try and win the game. Forget Mourinho, forget all that, because you've got to look at the quality in the two teams. Milan have got players that can hurt you. But I think that the players are so much up for this. They want to be the first team to retain the Champions League. And they, if the first leg's anything to go by, it should be a comfortable win, but that's not the way it works out.
Jose Mourinho has always been a results man, though, hasn't he? Yeah. I mean, a score draw might be something on his mind.
It's an amazing stat, isn't it? Sir Alex has only won once against Jose Mourinho. But he said to us on Friday in the press conference, he says once You know, it doesn't matter about me or Mourinho. Once those players go across the white line, it's between us and them. And he's backing his side, as I would, to beat Inter Milan. I mean, he was saying that, you know, everybody's saying, oh, the Inter Milan result was a bad one because United dominated, should have put the tie to bed. But he said, well, they settled for 0-0 before. You know, maybe not 0-0, maybe 1-1. As we said earlier, 0-0s can be a dodgy score. But I think United will finish it off because I think they're a better team, simple as that. And I think Italian football's going through a bad spell.
I don't think they would have, if United hadn't created anything and the game had been a stalemate, you'd have come away thinking differently. It's only because of the chances created that you feel that you've not got what you deserved. But as you said, going into the game, they said, well, we'll take a 0-0. We'd like a 1-1, but we'll take a 0-0. And because of the chances created, you're then frustrated with it, thinking we should be. But take it on its own merits. They're playing at home, 75,000 people, you know, baying, a fantastic atmosphere as there always is. And these are the big nights. And for the players, we talked about the players before, this is what your career is about. These games are what you go and play football for. All right, you play all the run-of-the-mill games, league games and all, and then you get cup finals and you get semi-finals and you get a situation like this. And this is where every single player wants to play because you look back in your career because remember that night, that was fantastic.
I mean, Inter Milan have got the players to try and lock up, but also United got the players to unlock it. You know, the Cristiano Ronaldos, Dimitrov, Berbatovs, people like that. You know, United must fancy themselves.
OK, we'll talk about that plenty more in part 2. That's it for part 1. Do join us after the break on the United Debate Show. Welcome back to part 2 of the United Debate Show. My guest this week are former United striker Frank Stapleton and chief football correspondent for the Sunday Express, John Richardson. Just before the break, we were talking about Inter Milan and a lot of attention, whether the two men like it or not, and maybe in Jose Mourinho's case he does like it, has been on the two managers. It is a fascinating duel, isn't it?
It is. I mean, there is mutual respect, you know, where Jose calls him the boss and... you know, Fergie says he's magnetic. He said he loves watching him on the TV. Obviously thinks he's a good manager. But as I say, he's got this horrendous record, you know, Sir Alex. So he want to put one over Jose this time, no doubt about that.
And, of course, Jose's made no secret, it would appear, albeit in code perhaps, well, maybe not so much code, that he would quite fancy becoming Sir Alex Ferguson's successor. Do you see him as a potential successor?
No, I think so. I think he's got the profile. He's got the record. I think also we've missed him really in the Premier League. I think more so the press guys.
Definitely.
You know, because the sort of stuff that you just give them, it's like headlines for you every day. You really don't have to work, John. You know, but I think that he's so good because he can be funny as well. He's got a good sense of humour and he can be serious as well. And he's got a real desire to win. You can see that. And maybe sometimes he wears it on his sleeve a little bit too much, but I think for everybody, if you ask other supporters, they like Mourinho. You know, they don't like him if he's beating their team. But when it comes to you like Mourinho, he's great. He's great for the league. He's great for what he gives it. It's something different. And I think he misses it. I think that it's a little bit sterile in Italy, and they don't seem to understand the sense of humour. You know,
I don't think they like him.
No, they don't.
The impression
He's having a battle with the Italian media at the moment. And I tell you now, Ali, that the Italian media are waiting for him to lose this game. And they really get stuck into him. You know, he was moaning the other week, said, oh, why are you having a go at me? You know, I'm top of the league, 7 points clear. What about Juventus? What about AC Milan? You know, etc., etc. But they're telling him, well, Roberto Mancini won the Scudetto 3 years running. So, you know, all you're doing is repeating what he's doing. We want you to win the Champions League. He's definitely having a war with the Italian media, and he's told people that I know that he misses English football. I think his next destination could be Spain, possibly in the summer. But where's he going to go? There's only Real Madrid or Barcelona. Surely with his Barcelona roots, Real Madrid is out, and Barcelona doing well could win the league. So you sense that it could be back to England in the summer. And, well, it's certainly bad timing as far as Manchester United is concerned, because the manager said he's going nowhere. You know, you'd have to carry me out in a box, he said on Friday. So I think Josie might have to wait a bit longer.
Really,
hopefully.
That was one of the conversations on the press conference ahead of the Fulham game, was it?
Yeah, and he was asked. He was asked by one of us, would you like to see Jose Mourinho? And he said, I don't want to get into that, He was a little bit embarrassed by it, I think. But he likes him. He thinks he's a decent manager. And I think deep down, Alex would think that he could do a job at...
Give some good red wine as well. He brings some nice red wines. That's probably what it is.
£300 bottles.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. But it's a great background to this tie, though, isn't it? I mean, the press conference for the game is tomorrow evening. I'm sure it'll be one of the most well-attended at Old Trafford for some time. He has that aura.
There's charisma. Let's be fair. He has charisma. He's one of those managers that... he was out of the game. He was out of our game for a while, and we have missed him. And as you said, John, the Italian media haven't taken to him because I think that he has a sense of humour. Yes. They're probably a bit too serious, and there's so much competition between the big clubs in Italy, but there's never. It's always serious. Never a little bit of joking and because he can't get it. And that's how he get away with it. It's just probably he's taken on the British sense of humour, and even though he's Portuguese, they tend to have a similar sense of humour. And he's, as terms of a manager, he wouldn't want him. And you just look at maybe one or two teams that are floundering in England and may have to go a little bit further to get what they need. It's maybe something like Newcastle. Could he go there and completely turn that around, John,
I'd love him to go to Newcastle, personal. Being a Newcastle fan, frankly.
But that's what Newcastle should be aiming at, instead of what's happened over a number of years, where they've, since Bobby Robson went, it hasn't really worked out that well.
No. I just think the club near here might be favourites to get him. Manchester City, possibly.
Really?
Yeah. There's been talk of City having sort of conversations with his aides, let's put it that way.
Well, that's another debate, Joe.
Yeah.
But can his team upset Manchester United on Wednesday?
They can do, obviously. I mean, I don't think they will. I think they will be tight defensively. I think there'll be niggling fouls. I think they want to slow the game down. They want to stop United's momentum. You could even see them playing for extra time and penalties. But I don't think it'll go. I think United are just be too strong for them, as they showed in the San Siro.
And of course, the fascinating thing about it is that you almost... An incidental after that is the Liverpool game, strangely. Normally the build-up would all be about the meeting of the two great rivals.
Yes, from today, but that this is overshadowed a little bit. But I think in the game itself, the mentality of the Italians is that they can play. They can play for penalties. They can play for extra time. They have that mentality. I don't think we have that mentality, because our game is different. It's structured differently. Our supporters demand more in terms of entertainment. So I think it will be a tough one. But I think United, unless they do something stupid, I think they should go through. And if they get the first goal, as John already said, about once they score, you just feel that they're going to go on and not on a roller coaster, but they do keep the discipline and they still go on and go get the goals.
The danger, obviously, is Inter Milan score first, but I wouldn't write United off then. They're well capable of getting 2, 3, even 4 goals, to be honest. The way they're playing at the moment. Especially, also the special nights, aren't they, Frank? The European nights at Old Trafford. The crowd comes alive. They get criticised sometimes for the quietness on a Saturday afternoon, but midweek Europe, it's banging, and I think the players react to that.
Okay, one of the most fascinating things about this is that the two teams are clear in their respective leagues as well, and there's a certain, I don't know, it's the best way we have of finding out how good the Premier League is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like seeing the best two teams who seem to be clear. Well, obviously Milan have won, Inter have won the last 2 or 3 championships. Look as though they're going to win another against United, who've been the dominant force here. The first leg taught us that perhaps the Premier League is the stronger league. Is it too simple to say that off the basis of what we've seen?
I think it is on one-off games, not one-off games, but they are basically each leg is a one-off. To compare it on that, it's just like getting the cup winners to play the league champions every year, and it doesn't always go as you think. Basically, you say the league winners should be the better team, but it doesn't always work. So it doesn't really give you any indication of anything. But certainly, at this stage, you're looking at Inter, who are so far ahead in their league. United are far ahead in the league. and agree that they're the best team in the country, that these two teams coming head to head, you could probably put it up as a Italian versus English league. But I think in the end, now the manager will be even thinking about that. They're just looking at getting to the last 8.
Let's have a look at the league situation, though, because obviously United came from behind to beat Newcastle and keep the lead at the top of the table. And Liverpool, well, seemingly were the only rivals a few weeks ago, although Chelsea are on level terms with them. How do you anticipate that game at the weekend, United-Liverpool?
I think it'd be a little bit like the Inter Milan game as far as Liverpool concerned. I think it'd be a little bit cagey. But again, I think United have got the players to overwhelm Liverpool. Liverpool really need to win, but I think Rafa Benitez, to be fair, would take a point now. He's saying it's a must-win game, but he won't want to lose it. If Liverpool lose, and there's Chelsea possibly, but I think it's United's title. I think United, in the end of the day, will win the title by 8 or 9 points, to be honest. I think they're far better than anybody else.
I think United can afford to lose the match. Not thinking that way at all, but they can afford to lose the game, especially with the game in hand, the Portsmouth game, to come up in April. And now, obviously, the semi-final weekend has taken over. The Wigan game now will have to be rearranged. So they've been behind in games all season. But when it's needed, I thought last Wednesday, Newcastle started off very well. And it was a bit of a surprise when they scored. But United found the way to win the match without playing at the best. And that's always a great indicator of where they're going. They can win games, they've got the mentality to win games as well as the ability, and I think the motivation is there. So there isn't much more that you can ask of them. They've give everything. You mentioned about the 1-0 wins. You go through periods. Yeah. Sometimes you take them. I think probably the most significant game was the Stoke game. Coming back off the Far Eastern trip and in the Stoke match, nowhere near, nothing to what they're playing now, and looking at it, and then they end up in the last few minutes getting the winning goal because they were, the hunger was there, the desperation was there that they were going to win the game, and they had done it weeks earlier against Stoke, but it was a different game away from home, and they'd been away, and everybody thought, well, is this going to put them off track? It didn't. They got the win that was needed and moved on.
I think Alex Ferguson would agree with you, Frank. He looks at that Stoke game as being a pinpoint game of the season, because let's face it, the other clubs missed out, didn't they, when United were in Japan. Alex Ferguson expected to come back from Japan and it should be catch-up time. It wasn't. And especially after that win, as you said, Frank, against Stoke. And that was so important.
We're running out of time. Inter Milan and Liverpool. Quick, brief thoughts as to an outcome.
I think the Inter Milan game will be easier, but I expect United to win both.
Frank?
Yeah, I have to say, I agree that, because United at home, I think the Inter Milan game will just be one goal. I think it's just one goal in it, and a bit like the Barcelona match last season.
OK, thanks as ever for your time, John.
Cheers, Ali.
That's it for this week. Join us next week. We've got Liverpool and Inter to look back on. Till then, see you then.